All right, it is 6 o'clock. So I'd like to call to order the regular board meeting of the Truckee Donner PUD. It is Wednesday, December 2nd, 6 p.m. Shauna, could we have roll call, please?
Thank you. Director Ellis?
Here.
Director Laliotis?
Here.
Director Aguirre?
Here.
Vice President Finn?
Here.
President Bender?
Here.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, we're going to defer the pledge. All right, interim general manager, do we have any changes to the agenda tonight?
President Bender, there are no changes this evening.
Got it, thank you. Okay, so number 5, public comment. Is there any public comment regarding any item not on the agenda tonight?
No, Mr. President.
Okay, we'll go to director update. Bob, do you have any updates for us tonight?
Well, this will be my last meeting. Just want to thank you guys and everybody at the PUD that works there. I think great organization, and it's been a pleasure working with all the board members, past and present. And sorry, I didn't get my advertising out in time, so it kind of screwed that up. Didn't think I needed it, but I took it for granted. And congratulations, Joe and Jeff, for beating me out. And I think you guys will do a great job.
You know what? I thought I was behind you on my advertisement. That I want to say to you, Bob, that I'm hating to have you gone from us.
What's that?
I really don't like you having gone from us, but that's the way things happen, I guess. But I would rather you were still with us.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
You know, it's just as Jeff's pointing out, when you're president, you get blamed for certain things that you have no control over. And I was the recipient of that during this election, and I'll just leave it at that.
Well, it's been a pleasure, Bob, to serve. So thank you. And yeah, the last meeting. So we're going to make it nice for you. So, all right. Joe, do you have any updates?
No, I don't. Jeff, thank you.
Okay. All right.
Other than I do want to say that I want to thank everybody that supported me on this election, and they got me by again another term. And so just thank you very much again for thinking of me and voting for me at the time. Thanks again.
All right. Thanks, Joe. Krista.
Yes, I do. And I do want to start with taking a moment to thank Director Ellis for his service to this district. I really appreciated your financial expertise and your level-headed perspective. It has been a pleasure working with you for the past 2 years. And I wish you all the best moving forward. So thank you, Director Ellis. Then I have another director comment. My comment this evening is going to acknowledge that there is an elephant in the room. I respect and I welcome public input, opinions, and different perspectives. I believe this entire board does. We have been participating in training to help us navigate such differences with open minds, kindness, and empathy. Therefore, it was extremely jarring to read the Moonshine Inc. article, for which I provided an interview, quoting an employee using words like retribution and toxic to describe the work environment here. By design, the board does not have much opportunity to connect with staff, but I recognize that district employees have feelings and fears and are understandably confused. I also understand that a vacuum begs to be filled. In the absence of information, which we cannot provide because it must remain confidential, it must be held in confidence, Rumors and inaccuracies are bound to fill the space. While I cannot tell you what we did discuss, I can share what we did not discuss. Pam Hobday's contract never entered the arena. As far as the board knows, REM was as satisfied with her work as we are, which, speaking for myself, is extremely. Reference the September 2nd board meeting, where we renewed the contract for the purpose of strategic planning. REM and the board were in full alignment, and it was always the intent to expire the contract in the spring with the completion of the strategic plan. To my knowledge, that never changed. The board had to make a hard decision. We had to set our egos aside and admit that a situation was not working. There is no upside in this for the board, except for the fact that we are united in our belief that this was the best thing to do for our community and for the employees of the district. We will carry our lessons learned forward, and we will continue to work towards a more perfect PUD, practicing our district values of safety, communication, integrity, accountability, timeliness, and work hard, play hard. So thank you. That's my comment.
Thank you, Krista. Tony, any director updates tonight?
Yeah, just want to thank Bob Ellis for his, I believe, 8 years of service. We do appreciate all the time and effort you put in. I, like Krista, also agree on the value of your perspectives, being in the local real estate business, and were very valuable during our discussions. So thank you for your service. It does not go unrecognized. And shout out to Jeff, Joe, and Kim Harris for their election victories, and looking forward to continue to work with Jeff and Joe, and working with Kim moving forward. And I do want to also briefly thank Krista and Brian Wright for their participation in that Moonshine Inc. article. I really do appreciate what you brought to the table as far as that article, and representing the district as best we can during a situation that wasn't anything that we wanted to be part of, but we made the decision and we had to move forward. So I thank both of you for your participation in that article. I think it was very well written, and your comments and your discourse in that article were, I thought, were very thoughtful and very meaningful, and exactly what we needed. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tony. Yes, Bob, definitely thank you for your 8 years of service. Really sorry to see you go. It's been a pleasure. The last 2 years of getting in the trenches with everybody, it was just nice to really get to know everyone when there's really challenging times in front of us. So, and congratulations to Joe and Kim, and here we go. Look forward to serving with the rest of the board. And Kim and Bob, congratulations. Or Bob, sorry to see you go again. Thank you for your 8 years. So it went by pretty darn quickly. And I do have a statement that I'd like to read. And unfortunately, last week, Moonshine Inc. published an article about the termination of our GM, which had quite a bit of untruths in it from the anonymous employee. And as I said during our November 18th meeting regarding Kim Harris's public comment, I just cannot help but keep thinking about the Speak Your Piece civility project and also the Truckee Way. I respect and honor every person's right, every employee's right to have and express their opinion. But what's difficult for me and unfortunate are the personal attacks and untruths during public comment and in this article. This is completely against what we are all trying to do regarding honesty, respect, constructive criticism, and what's best for the district. Pamela Hurt Associates' contract had nothing to do with the board's decision regarding the general manager. Transitions are very difficult, and our consultant has taken us through an incredibly challenging and enlightening process. We identify the district's core values and use those core values to identify core cultural skill sets, which were incorporated throughout this very intense hiring process. And the work done in that process is not lost, just the person at the end was. The core values have not changed. We keep them close to our heart, and they should guide us going forward. I have full confidence in this board to continue this process to retain the very best fit we can with the next general manager. I understand some people are upset, but please know some are not. The board's decision was termination without cause, and it's just that, without cause. I completely understand this is extremely difficult for those who are not in closed session with this board. Not knowing what is going on in closed session is very frustrating. Looking forward, I completely trust my fellow board members and respect them, and we must all respect this unanimous, extremely important and difficult decision. I completely trust in and respect our employees, and I know they will always do their very best, even though we may disagree on some issues. I truly feel this decision was in the very best interest of the district, the ratepayers, and all employees, even though some do not feel that way. And finally, please embrace and live our district core values. Follow the Truckee way and speak your piece so we can all move ahead in a constructive, inclusive, and respectful manner. So, thank you very much. So I think that was my biggest director update in a while, but tough to get out. So we have a general manager update now. Item number 7. Brian.
Thank you, President Bender. Have a few updates. So as Director Aguirre said, we'll try not to make this too lengthy because we have such a short meeting this evening. First, I wanted to echo everyone else's sentiments. I want to thank Director Ellis for his many years of service here on the board on behalf of the staff. He's always been a strong advocate for staff, for reliability, safety, all of the values we've spoken of. So I want to thank Director Ellis on behalf of the staff. I know that wherever he chooses in the future to serve, the public interest and this community's interest at heart, he will be a great asset. And I encourage him to continue, that in the future. So thank you, Director Ellis, and you're much appreciated. The other update I have is pretty exciting for us here as a district. I want to give an update to the board and the community on the strategic planning process that you alluded to earlier. We have a couple of components about ready to launch here that are pretty exciting. The first of which is our community outreach portion of the strategic planning process. Starting tomorrow, a contractor or a consultant that the district is working with, Probolsky Research, will be implementing or deploying a community survey. And this survey, again, will start December 3rd and be out there for the next couple of weeks. The intent of the survey is to collect data and information from the community on the interest, what the community's interests are for the district and the board to pursue. There will be 42 key questions that both in Spanish and English. There will be a follow-up. Basically, we'll consolidate this data with the consultant and provide this at the next board meeting and be able to apply that information as we move forward in the strategic planning process. So it's kind of the first step of community outreach, starting a survey and getting input. The survey is basically designed to, gather kind of a statistically representative group of our customer base and bring that input back here for us to work with. The second component we have going on is beginning in January 5th, several focus groups that we are working diligently. The staff is working diligently to get participation throughout the community, contacting our other, sister agencies, the nonprofits, different communities within our customer base, and try to get participation in these focus groups. There will be, I believe, 4 days where the focus groups will take place, January 7th, 12th, 13th, and 14th. We've divided these focus groups by neighborhood because we understand that different neighborhoods might have specific interest in terms of utility, kind of participation in their community. And we'll also, again, have opportunities for the Spanish-speaking segment as well. And these will be conducted by Zoom. Obviously, COVID presents some challenges in some of these community outreach projects, but we all, I think everyone in the community is getting very practice in this format. So we're looking forward to success there. So far, we have 138 people signed up for the process, and we're looking for more. It's a great group. It's a great starting point. We have, again, about another month to build that participation. Please look to our social media outlets, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, our website. You'll continuously see updates on that and links for participation. You can register to the focus group of your community. And, it's an opportunity for this community to participate in this strategic planning process. There's at the website, www.tdpud.org/ourfuture is the link to register, and please get the word out. Next steps in this process, the strategic planning process, we do have a workshop scheduled. It's for the board here on December 16th. It's going to be pretty action-packed, a lot to get done. Working on defining our community social environmental responsibility model. This is a new exciting model for business transformation here at the district. It really speaks to what we do here as a public agency. So board and public input on that process is really critical as we move forward. We also have, we'll review the initial data out of the survey. So the survey that's coming out here the next couple of weeks, that data with our consultant, Adam Probolski, we'll review that and we'll use that information to drive our goals moving forward. And we'll also have some input from staff as we participate over the next 2 weeks in some benchmarking exercises with some of our membership agencies, CMUA, Aqua, NCPA. Staff is benchmarking to see what other utilities and other industry leaders are doing in terms of strategic planning and provide that benchmarking reference. And so we'll review that as well at the next workshop. And then based on this data, the board will kind of brainstorm and provide and kind of establish the deliverables out of the focus groups, the questions, the information we're going to discuss. So we'll collect all of this, bring it to the focus groups in each of the communities, and hopefully have some really rich discussions on community input. So that's the strategic planning process update. We have been over the last 6 months or so providing the board also with some utility production updates. I'm happy to kind of report that we have had, we've noticed a drop in production in water. We were, through those late summer months into the fall, really high production that was above our conservation rate. But here in November, this last month, we've seen that drop. We obviously had the snow and cold weather. So we're getting back down into our normal production and conservation kind of thresholds. So we're definitely into the winter season. And, that's the update for the production. And that's all I have.
Excellent. Thank you, Brian. So a couple of things to put on our calendar coming up.
There is. Well, on that note, our consultant Pam Hobday will have some homework for the board, so she'll be issuing that out for the December 6th meeting to work on. So you'll have some updates and homework to do in the next 2 weeks.
Got it. All right, thank you. Okay. Agenda item number 8, public hearing. So we are now going to conduct a public hearing regarding ordinance 2020-02, setting water rates for fiscal year 21 through 25. We're now going to conduct this public hearing on the proposed water rates. Is there a presentation, or how do we want to do the presentation first and then talk about the...
Yeah, President Bender, if it's at the pleasure of the board here, if you wouldn't mind, we would like to do a presentation. We'll start with a kind of a recap of where we're at, what process we've gone through so far. I have Sean Korn with HDR Engineering with us this evening to present an update on the final draft, or the draft water study. And then after that presentation, at the board's direction, we can conduct the public hearing. Great,
let's do it. Thank you.
I will start with my presentation first, and then we'll pass it over to Sean here in shortly. All right, good evening, President Bender, members of the board. As we discussed, this is item number 8, a public hearing for the proposed water rates. So this evening's agenda on this particular item is to review the public process that we've accomplished thus far and the next couple of steps, and then review the actual draft water rate study, a high-level overview that Sean from HDR will conduct. Following Sean's presentation, we will conduct a public hearing for public comment, and then coming out of public hearing, consideration for adoption of the ordinance setting the water rates for fiscal year 21 through 25. Just briefly, we'll skim through the history here. As we've mentioned before in the previous workshops, back in 2015 was the last time the board set rates. They're broken down here for you in the spreadsheet. And so those rates were set up till this year, 2020. And so it's now time for us to set new rates for the outgoing years. And part of the rate process in California for public drinking water systems is Proposition 218, also known as the Right to Vote on Taxes Act. This became effective in 1997. They address all property-related fees or charges. There's some procedural requirements that you're all familiar with that we've gone through recently. The rates must be reasonable, proportional, and cost-based. There must be a public notification throughout this process. A public hearing must be conducted prior to adopting rates. And then during that public hearing, if there isn't a majority protest from the community, then the public rates can be moved forward. In preparation for this process, the district did contract with Far West Engineering at the end of 2019 or early 2020 to develop an updated 10-year capital improvement plan for the water infrastructure. And then subsequent to that, the district contracted with HDR Engineering to update the water utility rate study. From Far West Engineering CIP, a presentation was provided back in May. It provided a 10-year outlook for capital investments. Some of these things included hardening emergency power supply, the reliability during power outages for our water infrastructure, new water main pipelines for system redundancy, and repair and replacement of aging infrastructure. Through that study and report, Far West identified a capital improvement budget of about $7 million a year over the next 10 years. A quick review of what we've conducted thus far and what we need to complete. Back in September, on September 2nd, workshop number 1 was completed, reviewing the draft study. In October, we reviewed proposed rate structure and approved a new rate. Out of that workshop, the board scheduled a public hearing, which we are conducting this evening. Through the months of October and November, the district provided public notification and advertisement of the scheduled public hearing, including all parcel owners who receive service from the district. And then this evening, the agenda is to hold a public hearing regarding the proposed rate and potentially adopt an ordinance setting the rates for the following years. Provided the rates get adopted this evening, they would become effective for the first billing cycle after January 2nd of 2021. There's a correction there. So HDR Engineering's scope of work for this study was to perform a cost of service analysis, utilize the updated CIP from Far West Engineering, address some of the concerns of California's unfunded mandates that we're all expecting in the coming years, address continuing rises in costs exceeding inflationary expectations, and evaluate our current rate structure and a proposed modified rate structure. A couple of quick notes for the Prop 218 process. It requires the board schedule the public hearing. We must provide written notification by mail to the owner of record for each parcel, which we accomplished on October 16th. Conduct a public hearing on the proposed fee or charges not less than 45 days after that notification. The district must consider all protests against the proposed fee or charge. And if written protest against the fee or charge presented by mail by the owners of the identified parcels, the fee cannot be imposed if it's more than a majority response. Here's a quick example of the notification that was sent out on October 16th. And I would like to pass this over to Sean for his presentation. And then following that presentation, the recommendation from staff will be to conduct a public hearing on the proposed rates. So Sean, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you, Brian. Good evening, President Bender and board members. I will share my screen here. And go into presentation mode. There we go. So as Brian mentioned, this evening I'll walk through a summary of the proposed rates and the summary of the comprehensive water rate study. As I go through this, I'll talk real briefly about the overview and process we use to establish the rates, some of the key inputs that are used to develop the rate study, and ultimately look at the proposed rates for review and discussion as part of the public hearing. As Brian mentioned, through the Proposition 218 process, if there's no majority protest, then the board may adopt the rates as presented in the study. So as we've talked at some of our previous meetings and discussions, the purpose of the water rate study is really to develop a projection of rate revenues that are sufficient to fund the operating and capital needs of the district's water system. And that's really looking at what are those future needs from an operational maintenance expense, so the annual cost for staff, for materials, for supplies, as well as those capital improvements that are necessary to maintain the system. So pipeline replacement, electricity reliability, as Brian discussed, as part of the Far West Engineering capital plan development. Now, what needs to come out of this study to meet the requirements of Proposition 218 are equitable, proportional, and cost-based rates, so that we reflect the cost the district incurs to provide those services proportionally between the customer classes of service or the rate schedules. As we go through this process, we also need to incorporate the district's financial planning criteria or policies. Those include items such as maintaining debt service coverage ratios for existing debt and any future planned debt, adequately funding capital through annual rate revenues. That's the renewal and replacement funding component, which was a discussion we've had over the past couple of meetings, as well as meeting target ending reserve balances that the board has set in the past for the water utility. We go through this process by using generally accepted methodologies as outlined by the American Water Works Association. That's the manual there, the M1 manual that outlines the different approaches. But it's important to understand that the study is tailored specifically around the district's water system operation and design and the customer's unique characteristics and needs and how they place an impact on the system and the benefit they receive from service. And the way we really do that is incorporating specifically the district's budget for fiscal year 21 as our starting point, and working with district staff based on the financial plan that staff has built, as well as the historical changes that have been seen in operational and maintenance expenses to develop this projection over the long term. As has been mentioned, we took into consideration and built the capital funding analysis around the Far West Infrastructure Capital Plan development. And as was mentioned, that recommends roughly $7.7 to $7.2 million a year over the next 10 years to address the deficiencies in the existing water system, as well as replace aging assets. As we go through this process, that cost of service analysis is based specifically on the district's customer data. So the customer characteristics such as the number of customers, the amount of water consumed by each customer class or rate schedule, or how they utilize the system from a peak day perspective, which really drives the sizing of those pipelines, pumps, and so on that are necessary to maintain the high quality level of service. We also take into consideration how we think about the assets that are in the ground today and how those will be replaced and managed going forward, along with those policies that I touched on, such as minimum reserve balances and adequate debt service coverage ratio. Brian spoke a little bit about Proposition 218. This is in the California Constitution, Article 13D, Section 6, and it also known as Proposition 218, and it really outlines the approach and needs that have to be met when developing water rates. And unfortunately, it's not prescriptive, but it comes back and talks about, in part, that the fees, or in this case, the water rate, shall not exceed the reasonable cost of providing the service or the proportional cost of providing the service. And so that outlines the parameters or the guidelines that we work within as we develop the overall study. Now, based on the recent legal decisions around water rates, the unit costs that come out of the cost of service analysis essentially provide the foundation for the proposed rates in year one. So it sets what that fixed charge is going to be, as well as what that consumption charge is going to be. The way we do this is through a three-step process: a revenue requirement, a cost of service, and a rate design. That revenue requirement determines the overall revenues necessary to fund those operating and capital needs. So it's the size of the pie in any given year. You take that revenue requirement and we proportionally allocate that and distribute that to the customer classes of service based on how they use the system. So we take that pie and we split that up between the rate schedules based on how they use the system on an average day basis, a peak day basis, number of customers, et cetera, as we go through this process. Once we have those first two components completed, we can develop rates that are based on the cost of service and the revenue requirements. So we have that reasonable overall fee level, as well as the proportionality that's required in Proposition 218. So to start off with the revenue requirement, we've touched on what the reason is for completing this. It really takes into consideration the district's policies and goals from a financial perspective. And we do look out over a multi-year period. So in this case, we looked at over a 10-year period. Ultimately, the focus is on the next 5 years for the proposed rates. But we want to make sure you look long-term so that you understand what those changes are as you go out over time to maintain the district service levels. The analysis is also completed on a standalone basis. So as an enterprise fund, we want to make sure that the water revenues fully support the water expenses, both operating and capital. And we don't include or assume any transfers from any other district funds, such as the electric utility. And for any folks that are used to accounting terms, we utilize the cash basis approach. Really what this means is we look at each year on an individual basis, What are the total needs? How do we fund those needs on an ongoing basis? So a capital plan is really is always a key driver and discussion point in the development of a rate study. And this is a graphical representation of the planned capital improvements over the 10-year period. So this is based on the Far West plan. As we developed this, we have transitioned the overall capital needs in over this next 4-year period, as you can see, in order to smooth those rate adjustments and fund those capital improvements over time. So as we get out through the end of this 5-year period with the proposed rates, the district should be at that annual $7 million a year of funding for the capital improvements to maintain the existing system. Now, we've talked about the two primary components of a revenue requirement, and that's our operating and capital needs. So as we look at those operating and capital needs, this is a graphical summary of the overall revenue requirement. In each of the years we're reviewing, fiscal year 21 through fiscal year 25, the blue or the bottom part of each of those bars reflects the annual operation and maintenance expense. So that's increasing annually based on historical inflationary trends that the district has experienced. And then on the capital side, there's two methods that municipal utilities such as the district use to fund capital. One is through long-term debt. The other is through rate-funded capital, and that is the green or the middle component of each bar, or the red and the top component of each bar. And what each of those look at is the overall funding needs to meet that capital improvement fund. So as you can see, the green bar gets a little smaller as some of the existing debt is paid for, and then it starts growing as we're layering in debt to fund that $7 million a year as we transition out over this 5-year period. The red dashed line in the middle of the screen is the current revenue levels. So as you can see, that is deficient over the time period where we are essentially barely covering operating and annual debt service. The black dashed line reflects the overall proposed revenue trend in order to meet the full capital funding and operating expenses on an annual basis. Now, a couple of the key financial components that we look at. One is the debt service coverage ratio. The gray bar is the legal minimum. So that is the lowest that the district can possibly go without becoming in default of any outstanding debt, and that's set at 1.25 times. So after the district pays for O&M, there needs to be 25% more additional revenue available to cover this requirement. Now, as we look at the red line, without any rate adjustments, in 23, the district would start going below that minimum legally required target. The blue line represents the projected with the proposed rate adjustments, and that is increasing for a couple of reasons. One, we have some debt being paid off, and two, we're increasing the level of annual rate-funded capital. Now, that's in addition to our O&M to fund that capital improvement project, and the greater the annual rate-funded capital, the higher the debt service coverage ratio. The bottom right chart looks at our target ending reserve balance. Right now, we're running at about $6 to $7 million. And with the proposed adjustments, you can see that trend line over the 10 years, we get up to the district's target of 180 days of O&M expense. So we're not meeting that minimum policy target until the 10th year based on the plan developed in the rate study. Now, these are two important criteria as we are assuming additional long-term borrowing as part of the capital funding plan, and maintaining these metrics at a solid level. Upward trends for both of those are going to be helpful in the overall financing terms that the district will receive as you go through that process. So overall, rate revenue adjustments are necessary to fund the operating and capital needs of the water utility. As we go through this, we're targeting meeting our financial metrics and policies over the 5 and 10 year period. And the overall rates are impacted here. You can see in the chart at the bottom of this slide, the overall transition plan, increasing the rates annually. This is an average bill, and it's prior to any cost of service or rate structure adjustments. It's simply taking the overall revenue needs at this point and the increase that would occur over the 5 year period. Once we know the overall revenue requirement of the size of the pie, then we can come back and develop the cost of service analysis. And the reason we do the cost of service analysis is no utility tracks costs by type of customer. So today we worked on a residential main. Tomorrow we'll work on a commercial main. We have a water system that provides service to all of the district's customers. So the cost of service analysis, as outlined in the AWWA M1 manual, allows us to equitably and proportionally allocate that revenue requirement to each of those customer classes of service or rate schedules. And we do this so that we avoid subsidies, so each customer's rate or their revenue reflects the cost they place on the system. And that's really in place to meet the requirements and intent of Proposition 218. As I mentioned, the results of the cost of service provide average unit costs, which become the fixed charge, and the consumption charges in year one of the study. So as we go through this process, we looked at each of the different customer classes' characteristics, how they utilize the system, how we collect costs through the fixed charge and consumption charge. And it's important to understand that this is not a fixed variable analysis. This is a cost of service analysis, which allocates costs based on why the district incurs those costs. So on an average day basis, a peak day basis, or a customer related basis. And based on that analysis, we're able to develop that proportional allocation and distribution of costs to each of the different customers' classes of service. As we go through this process, Prop 218 does limit our ability to phase in cost of service adjustments. So we have to move towards those cost of service results. And as we've talked in the past, each time you do a comprehensive study, it resets that cost of service. So that first year is a resetting year. And then we adjust rates annually based on the overall revenue needs. And when you go through another process, as customer characteristics change, as maybe the demographics change, or your overall operations change, you capture those in the next cost of service analysis and that next set of proposed rates. As we do this, we have to make sure there aren't any subsidies between customer classes, and those unit costs ultimately provide us those bases to show that each customer group is paying their equitable and proportional share. So how we do this process, when you look at the overall summary table at the top of this slide, we compare the total current revenues to the proposed allocated and distributed revenue requirement. And we look at the overall system adjustment as well as the adjustments to each customer class. Now, the bottom table takes those costs based on the customer or average day or peak day, which in the bottom chart are noted as commodity and capacity. And we divide those through by the billing units for each customer class. So whether it be the total consumption for residential in tier 1 or tier 2, or all consumption for commercial customers, and then the number of equivalent meters for both customer classes for the fixed charge. So if you remember numbers off this page, it'd be the 99 cents and $1.40 for tier 1 and tier 2, $1.37 for commercial, and $75.74 for the fixed charge on an equivalent meter basis. So once we have those numbers, then we can go into the rate design analysis. And what we can do here is think about how you charge your customers, the overall goals and objectives of the board and the district of how we develop rates and what message we provide to our customers with our rate structure. So here's a summary of the proposed residential rates. As I mentioned, there's that $75.74 in fiscal year 21 for a 5/8 inch and a 3/4 inch meter. That does increase based on meter size. That's why that $75.74 is on an equivalent meter basis. And then that increases for the larger size to reflect the demands and the capacities they can place on the system from a fixed basis approach. The consumption charge is a two-tiered increasing rate structure. So 99 cents and $1.40, as I mentioned from the prior unit cost slide. And then we adjust those equally, the fixed and the consumption charge over time, over this 5-year period to meet our overall revenue goals. In the bottom part of that chart or table and the chart on the right, you can see what those average impacts are to customers in the first year in the chart on the bottom right, and then over the 5-year period as we look at the overall customer bill change. On the commercial rate side, the fixed charge is the same as the residential customers. Again, a 5/8 inch meter or a 2-inch meter is the same size for either customer class. The same amount of water can go through that meter. So it's the same fixed charges on that increasing or variable meter charge component. As we looked at in the cost of service analysis, and this is something we worked on during the last cost of service, is starting to transition commercial to their appropriate levels, we see a reduction in that overall consumption component. So on the consumption side, depending on how much water and what size meter the commercial customer may have, then they may or may not have a decrease in their bill for the first year. All customers will see the same level of increase in the out years. The final component of the proposed rates are the pump zone charges or pump zone rates. These are charged for each of the different zones to pump it up to the next pressure zone. And these were updated as well based on the cost of pumping that water up to those next zone. These also increased. And you can see those changed from 60 cents for zone 2 to 75 cents and so on for each of those subsequent zones or higher zones to pump the water up the hill to those different pressure zones. To give the board an idea of how the rates compare with others in the Tahoe Basin, you can see here we have most of the other water utilities in the basin as a comparison. Again, as I've mentioned before, this is not an apples to apples comparison. It simply provides you a checkpoint to see how your average customer rates, which in this case is a 3/4 inch meter and 5,000 gallons a month, and the same amount of water and same meter size for these other utilities look like. I say it's not apples to apples because we don't know where all these other utilities are in their utility life cycle. Are they at a replacement spot the same as the district is? Are they doing different approaches to how they maintain their system or replace their system over time? Or are there possible other differences in how they obtain water supply, treatment, and distribution to their customers? Now, this is the fiscal year 21 rate. It's also important to understand that all of these utilities across the board have at least 2 years left in their existing Proposition 218, if not 3 to 4 years, to continue to increase their rates. So as the district's rates go up, all of these utilities' rates will also increase over the next several years based on their specific comprehensive water rate study that they have completed. So overall, in summary, the rate design, our cost of service and revenue requirement were the basis for the development of the rates to meet the requirements of Proposition 218. We developed proposed rates for a 5-year period, and as Brian mentioned, these would be implemented in January of 2021 if adopted by the board as you move forward through this process. And with that, I will turn it over to Brian and President Bender for the next steps.
Thank you, Sean. All right, so I think, Brian, we're at the conducting the public hearing. We got a bunch of emails. Majority emails were in protest, but I guess I should correct it. These are not, we're in the 50 to 60 range of public input regarding this. So not majority of ratepayers within the district. So just to clarify that point. So Brian, did you have anything to summarize on this? I did read them all once Shauna posted them and as they popped in. Yeah,
you have correct, as you correctly stated, we've been receiving written protest submittals. Shauna did a kind of a status report at the close of business today. We're continuing to track any that are received. The one caveat is that staff has not had the opportunity to verify, qualified submittal, making sure that they're indeed from, registered parcel owners within the district's service area. That process.
One thing, Brian, let me just interject. I'm opening the public hearing, not. So I just wanted to make sure I got that language in there. So carry on.
Yeah, that was going to be my next recommendation here for you. So you are correct in terms of the protest received. it is not within that majority plus one range, but they have been logged and accounted for. And so my staff recommendation at this point would be to open the public hearing and move forward.
All right, so the public hearing is officially open. We do have one Q&A or one comment from the Q&A and a bunch from ratepayers and some in support, probably what in the 60 range. So is there any additional comment on Q&A? And I'm going to pause just to, and then Shauna, do you see any emails popping in for any additional?
Mr. President, I've had a couple protests come in up until now. We're at 75. And as General Manager Wright stated, we'll need to verify some of those.
Okay,
No public comment on this item right now.
got it. Okay. All right. So I think we can officially close the public hearing and move on to director comments and discussion. Tony, did you have, oh, Steve, yeah.
Excuse me, President Bender, you had mentioned that there was something on the Q&A as part of the public comment. We should probably take that up.
Yeah, can everyone see that one in the Q&A, the last one from Emily?
Mr. President, that was posted right after you closed public comment.
Okay, yeah, the first one appeared to be, we can just include with the general on nothing on the agenda. The second one appears to be regarding the public hearing here, the one 612. Oh, and then Ann Penfield just posted one as well.
There we go.
Okay.
Would you like me to read those into public comment, sir? Or just have them inputted in?
If you could just input it, I don't want to set the precedent of having to read 75 emails, if that's okay with everyone. Is we good with that? Those are public Q&A. Is that correct? Like
that
everyone?
President.
Say again?
That is correct, Mr. President. There's
Okay.
three. There's one from Emily Cashton, Annie Penfield, and Paula Hendrickson.
Yes, a new one from Paula. Okay.
I will make them all part of the record.
Got it. Okay. All right. So let's see. It looks like, oh, we're getting a few more. Yeah. Okay. Just kind of pausing, waiting for them to come in. So, oh yes, see, there's another one. Okay. All right. Okay. All right, so at this point, I'd like to close the public hearing and move on to director comments and questions. And Tony, Steve.
President Bender, just to be clear, the Q&A, the questions, the public comment presented, that is accessible to every member of the public that wants to read them. Is that correct, Shauna?
That is correct, Mr. Gross.
Okay, so then I don't think they need to be read as long as they are accessible to the full board and to the full public. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for clarifying. All right, Tony.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. I'd like to acknowledge that I have read all of the public comments that were provided, the protests that were provided this afternoon, and I have just tried to read, even though they're still coming in, comments that were on the Q&A. First off, I just want to thank HDR for a thorough presentation and an important presentation to go over the process, which identifies why we're here and how we got here, and why and how we're looking forward. This is, we spent a lot of time talking about why, and also a lot of the nuances about our goal to begin to pump some money into this infrastructure, because we have to. We can't sit back and wait and continually hope that things will get better. And we need to reinvest in our infrastructure. We can't kick this can down the road and continue to pile on debt and costs for the future generations in Truckee. We have to address this stuff now. Reliability, redundancy, all critical path items that are at the forefront of every water system, should be at the forefront of every water system's capital improvement plan, and clearly stated in our master plan that was just finished last year or this past year. We have work to do, which is why we're here tonight. I do want to also add one thing to Sean's apples to apples discussion, and that is that other agencies have other sources of revenue, such as property tax, which we do not. When you look at Tahoe City PUD, and their rates are very comparable, and I'll use the word comparable, there's another rate component that's not shown there, and that's property tax that Tahoe City uses to fund water capital infrastructure improvements. So it is not apples to apples, and revenue sources are also not, depicted, can also not show up in this, because these are strictly rates. Other agencies also have what they call a capital improvement fund, which is a separate line item on their bill, which may not show up in some of these comparisons. So the reason we use these as comparisons is to make sure that people are clear as to what it is, what the costs are, and how they compare to other agencies. We're all facing the same dilemmas with aging infrastructure, and we really need to move forward. I do want to also open up the discussion with the rest of the board. As a reminder, in our previous rate study 218 process, we moved forward with the adoption of a 5-year rate plan, and we were descriptive to the point where we indicated that those were the maximum rates that we would achieve, or that we were asking to achieve through that 5-year period. And the reason we use that term is also so that we acknowledge that, and in the past we've done this as well, that we would revisit rate increases annually as capital budgets and operating budgets get fine-tuned every year or two, that we revisit the rate increases on an annual basis to determine, is it justified to go to the full rate, or have we fine-tuned our operations and our capital improvement plan such that, hey, we don't, we may not need to go that full 8%. Maybe we go 6. Anyways, I'd like to build that into the conversation and with the rest of the directors tonight, and see if there's any interest in including those two provisions in our in the adoption of the ordinance moving forward. And maybe Steve can help guide us through that on how to craft that.
Great, thank you, Tony. It appears some folks are unable to find the Q&A in the Zoom meeting. It's a clickable link at the bottom middle of the Zoom window that is open, that's showing all the videos. Sometimes it hides itself, but if you move your mouse to the lower, that menu bar should pop up, and then you're able to left click on Q&A, and then you can scroll through all of the public comments that we have had. They're showing 11. So I just wanted to reiterate that. And Tony, thanks for saying that. I did have on my notes here to talk about the, these would be the maximum amounts. But before I dive into mine, I'd like the other directors. Krista.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak out right now. I just wanted to, first of all, thank everybody for attending and giving your comments. I think this is a really challenging time for all of us that we have to do this via Zoom. It's a lot, I think more satisfactory when we're in person. So, but this is where we're at. I want to acknowledge everybody's comments that came in. I also read them, and there were some overarching themes that I really want to make sure that we acknowledge and address, which are all perfectly valid. So the most important one to me is the fear that not all of our ratepayers are going to be able to afford it, particularly right now in the middle of a COVID, pretty much emergency economy that we're in at the moment. And I want to let people know that we can help with that we have programs to assist people who have lost income due to COVID that we implemented this spring. We all have always had and will continue to have a low income relief program that credits you annually with the amount of your highest water bill. You can access these programs through Sierra Community House. This is a powerful partnership, and I strongly encourage anybody who needs it to please ask for help. You can find it on our website through customer service. When you drop that menu comes down, you can click on assistance, and it gives you the numbers to call. And I do also want to stress that I think it's incumbent, we can't base our rates on income. We have to base it on cost of service, as Sean so deeply went into that deep dive. But I do believe that we, as the board and the district, need to do a better job of informing our ratepayers about the programs that are available to help them. And that it is also incumbent upon us to make sure that those programs are broad enough and effective enough to help all of the people who might need it. So that's where we're going to have to get a little bit creative, perhaps. One thing that frustrates me right now is that we don't have a lot of people taking advantage of these programs. So that's, again, it's hard to reach people in this day and age. It's hard but we need to try to do a better job. We need to, I think, to put our focus on outreach, on making sure that we are reaching the people who need the help the most. And then again, making sure that those programs are robust enough if people need them, that we can help. So that was my number one, and I'm sure that's everybody, that's most people's fear. We can't afford to do this. But, and I'll be super honest, full disclosure here, my family qualifies for income assistance. Our board is made up of a variety of income levels, and but I still voted for this. I am still in favor of this increase because access to clean water, it is a basic human right. We all deserve and need access regardless of our ability to pay for it. At the same time, water is the most precious resource that we have, and we need to value it. We need to value it. It is at the top of my list. That's why I live here, is for the clean air and the clean water. We have a deep responsibility to safeguard this natural gift. It is, I think, gut-wrenchingly irresponsible to spend time, money, and resources to pump this water that is the envy of the world out of an ancient aquifer just to spill it all over Northwoods Boulevard or out of our faucets. We need to take care of our system. We need to conserve this resource. We need to make sure that our future generations have the same access to pure, clean water that we have. And another theme I want to address that I have seen come up is why should Tahoe-Donner maybe should pay more than another area? A lot of people point to the Donner Lake when we had to take over that water system. And the difference between new development and growth, which is when we took over the Donner Lake water system, that was. So they needed to pay into our system because it was brand new. And that is funded by fees. And that's what they're talking about. That fee is still on Donner Lake's water bills. But what we're talking about is repairs and improvements to the system that already exists, and that has to be funded by rates. These are really clearly delineated, laws that we kind of have to operate under. We don't really have any choice. But more broadly, our district is not composed of a collection of competing neighborhoods in a Hunger Games competition for resources. We are one community. We are capital improvement projects anywhere in the district benefit everyone in the district. It benefits all of us. Every neighborhood, I am certain, is going to have its moment in the hot seat where they have repairs or emergencies that have to be addressed, and we will respond to each and every one of those. We are not parsing out who charges what based on anything. We are a community. We are a district. All of us are in this together. And also, I just want to very much stress the safety component of this. If we have a fire that starts in Tahoe-Donner, for example, and we don't have the water flows to address it, that fire is not going to stop when it gets to Prosser Heights. It is not going to stop when it gets to downtown. We need to ensure that we have the redundancy, the resiliency, and the depth in this system to serve our whole community. And to, safety is a tremendous component. Our citizens need to be safe and secure, and that's what this is. And I just want to point out, and I know I've already mentioned our lower income ratepayers are the ones I'm most concerned about. But when you talk about catastrophic failure, who pays the highest price for that? It is always our lowest income citizens. They are the ones that are not going to be able to afford to rebuild. They are the ones that are going to have to leave the life that they built here because they can't recover. If we have a water main burst, anywhere, and they're without water for a week, it's not going to affect the people who can move into the hotels for a week. It's going to affect the people who are on the lower end and can't afford to do that. Those are the ones, this is where the social justice aspect comes into it. And so it seems like this is going to hurt our lowest income ratepayers. But in the broader scheme of things, we have to do this to help them. We need to make our system, again, as strong and resilient as possible. So I think there are all these streams running through this. we need to make sure that those ratepayers are protected. I feel very confident that we can. I will give you my personal, I will follow up with staff on this every month for the next year to make sure that we are, again, robustly supporting programs to help our lowest income ratepayers. And I think at the moment, that's kind of all I have, and I'm sure more things will come up, but I just wanted to point out the difference between growth and new development and the fees that pay for that, and the rates that pay for maintenance and upgrades, two different things, making sure our lowest income customers are protected, and understanding that these upgrades are very necessary for just the health and safety of our community as a whole. So that's where I come down on all of these, a lot of these things, not all of them. I'm sure I'll think of something else to say later, but thank you for the moment.
To address, I did close the public hearing, and it appears there's a lot more comments, and it appears that some folks are not able to read the previous comments. So I think I'm just going to start from the top, Steve, and just keep going until there's a lot of questions. We'd be here all night if we were going to answer all 80 comments and questions from all the public items. So those can be offline and talk to district staff to get those answered. Would you agree with that thought process here, mine, Steve, to read these?
So I would, President Bender, I would agree that due to the stated concerns and difficulty about the public's ability to access and read the comments in the Q&A, that it would be appropriate to go ahead and read them. I think you should perhaps make a last call for any public comments, and perhaps in the next couple minutes, ask people, the public, to write down their comments, and that you will then close public comment and read the comments that have been submitted through that time period. Does that sound acceptable?
Okay, so as we're talking here, 7:12, maybe close public comment as of 7:12, and then I'll go through what's been written down or written down as this at this moment. This is kind of like a second chance because folks were not able to read what was there. So I'll pause a little bit for 15 seconds to 7:13. But I think I can start reading. All right. The first one from Emily, that was regarding the general manager on July, so I'm not going to read that. That should have been, that's on something not on the agenda. And then, well, I guess I could read it to just get it in the public. We'll just start from the top. Okay.
And President Bender, I would read the first and last name of the person who submitted the comment.
Got it. Okay. So Emily Cashton, she had a comment about not being able to raise her hand in the Q&A, so I will continue with her comment here. I sent in concerns to the GM July 16th, 2020, never received any response. Can the board review my concerns regarding unrepaired drainage issues emanating from the Montano property in which the TDPUD installed a road? As seen by satellite, where drainage was not properly mitigated as per Lahontan or town's planning resolution on the Montano Planning Commission findings. Okay, so it's regarding some drainage, Donner Lake. Okay, Emily Cashton, given that the 1,400 hookups involving Donner Lake property owners were to get off a year, okay, so they had a year of boiling water. Notice owners were put in a special district where they paid for legal costs, drilling wells, and all the infrastructure to completely rebuild the system. At present,
where we continue to pay without inclusion of all other PUD customers. Why should Donner Lake owners have to now have rates raised to repair those customers in town's water system, which should have been covered by those communities? Put those communities in special districts, which would be fair. And Penfield. The rates look to be 50% increase and was not advertised as that amount, and commercial rates are not going up as high as homeowners. Paula Henriksen. Why did your mailers not include an annual total? Mine will be an increase of $400 per year. And Penfield. The info in the notice did not explain on how much the rate was increasing, so I feel we can all say that the notice was insufficient. Paula Hendrickson. Are the rate increases affected by the new developments around Truckee? Paula Hendrickson, would the board consider creating a lower base rate for those who don't use much water? Emily Cashton, with only 3 Q&As, these, as in all public comment periods and meetings, should be heard by the public and read for the public to hear. Simply approving them is not allowing public voice. So I am now reading them. And Penfield, since notice insufficient, we can ask that it be thrown out and should be redone. Emily Cashton, please inform the board that as I and many watch this, there's no button to see what questions or comments were placed prior to and during public comment. This is not full disclosure to the public, not to read and identify an analysis of what was sent in. Please make this matter of public record so the CPUC can review. And Penfield, I can see only 4, so maybe there's a problem with Q&A. And Penfield, the comment portion is not working, so you should redo the entire process. Emily Cashton, excuse me, you did not inform the public on all comments and questions how to access prior to closing public comment. Please review that, as this is not transparency. Thomas Durlu, pardon me if I'm not pronouncing your last name correctly. The public and Q&A appears to be only available to the host and panelist. Jan Zabrinsky, thank you to Jeff Bender for trying to answer my question. However, my Q&A tab shows 1, all questions, only an apparent reference to my question. There's a glitch somewhere, so hence reading. Paula Henriksen, thank you for the discount a few years ago when I was laid off. It's only good once per family. Emily Cashton, why did not Glenshire that the PUD took on at the same time as Donner Lake not have the same obligations? Okay, so comparing Glenshire to the PUD regarding those takeovers. Emily Cashton, in the late 1990s and early 2000, the water system in Donner Lake was a colander of water leaks. Cost-cutting methods caused premature failure of the system, and yet all the rest of us are paying for fixing their system, a long-gone failing system. Emily Cashton, please make sure that all submitted comments prior or during the meeting are posted for people to read. This has been done real time with the town council. The CPUC needs to know what the public had available. Okay, now everyone has been fully read out loud. Okay. With that, the public hearing is officially closed. We've heard from Tony and Krista. All right, Joe, you're at the upper. I see your video higher than Bob. I'll get to Bob last.
Oh, let's see. I got to talk into the machine now. Well, this one. Okay. Everything. I wish I could repeat every word that Tony had said, because it's not a kick the can thing. It's not sweep under the rug. It's a have to do. If we want to keep water in our homes, I'd rather do that than not have any water in our homes. And it's not saying that we wouldn't have water in our homes, but without maintenance and fixing our infrastructure all the time, you never know when we could be a catastrophic failure. And so I have to hand it to Sean for the work he's put into this. He's done this for years for us. Every time we have a period of water rates that we have to raise, we always go to a compromise on the rates. And we seem to come out okay and everything because we haven't had any, like Krista mentioned, fires or any big catastrophes. But this is a have to do thing. Yeah, I was running for election this year, and that's the worst thing that directors and commissioners hate is have water rates come in the middle of your election. But it's the way it happened. That's the way it happened. And I know, being on the board this many years, that we had to go through it. We had to do it. We have to come up with something, and we have to implement it. And I don't know. I mean, I wish maybe we could talk through the day tomorrow, because we can just sit here and pound the same thing into it. But it's a have to thing. And I think that Sean did a bang up job on this. And I've had some calls at the house from ratepayers. And I say that it's a have to do. You can't kick it away. And so we're going through it, and we hope that we come out. And I think it's a high rate, but every rate is a high rate as far as I'm concerned. But here we are, and I hand it to the people that have worked on this so long, and Sean did a nice job going through the summary, the study. I think he hit the high points, and he hit the things that we were supposed to know. And he came up to the conclusions. And this agency is an agency that is their job to do, and to study and to find out where to go with it. And Sean has come up with a good plan so far. So, I can rattle on and say the same thing over and over, but I'm going to stop right there. And I was with Krista on the fire thing. We don't want those things to happen. But if we did, we want to be prepared, and we want to have a good, sound water system. And that's what we're going to keep it up by these rates, and by keeping up the maintenance on it and stuff. So that's it, Jeff. I'm going to let you go on that one.
All right. Thank you, Joe. Bob Ellis. You're muted now, Bob. No, you're
Okay. You can hear me? Okay. Yeah, I appreciate everything that Tony and Krista said. They had a lot of information there, especially Tony, information that some of it I wasn't aware of. But and then Krista made a lot of good points, and Joe made a couple of good points, I thought also. I don't want to spend a lot of time going on, but I think the main reason we need to make an increase and address this infrastructure is because of the fire issue. I think that is extremely critical, and I think that's something that involves the whole district, and I think it's very important. And I also believe that the like Tony said, we have kicked the can down the road a little bit to try to keep the rates low, even though we have been increasing the water rates, trying to plug all the holes in the system. We've done a great job, I think, in the last 15 years, I believe. And we're just going to have to put it in overdrive to continue to get this thing going and improve the system. And that's all I got. Also, I appreciate all the comments that were made. I'm shocked that there's that many people watching tonight. Normally, there's only 2 or 3 people watching. And I'm glad someone's actually watching what we're doing and is concerned about it. And that's great. But I think this is a necessary evil. I, of all people, do not want to increase my costs or my rates, but I think it's necessary that we need to do just for safety of the community. And back to you, Jeff.
Thank you, Bob. Krista, you unmuted. Did you have another?
That was fairly accidental, but I do, as long as I'm here. Maybe if we could address a couple of things that came up on the comments as we were going. And I'm going to, I think, ask Brian if he could maybe give us a little more clarity on the difference between new developments and the rates. Sort of, that tension is there. I'm looking right now at Paula Henriks's comment. Are the increases affected by the new developments around Truckee? And also that Emily Cashtan had several comments about, again, the Donner Lake versus Glenshire versus all the rest of us, and where are there differences in what people are paying and what people are and how they're being charged for it. But I think maybe Brian would be able to explain that a little more clearly than I did. And then also if Mr. Gross could address the comments about having to redo it because of, I can't recall where that was, technical difficulties or, sorry, I lost my space.
No, I think that you're pretty much nailing it there. Technical difficulties, not able to post public comment, but
as far as it goes, do we have to redo the whole thing because of, since notice insufficient, can we ask them to be thrown out and be redone? Those sorts of, which I think there was a pretty sufficient notice, and we did send out twice. And I know I had people again call me and really spell it out. So I think there must have been information there. But just to, again, if Steve could address legalities of those sorts of inquiries. Okay, and now I'm muting again.
Got it. Thank you.
Steve, you want to go first?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So per Director Finn's questions about whether or not we would have to go through this process again because one, assertions that the public notice that was submitted was insufficient and did not provide sufficient detail, and two, whether or not we would have to reconduct our public hearing because of technical issues and trouble that the public has had with respect to hearing and or seeing public comments. With respect to the notice that was sent out, the Prop 218 notice that was sent out to property owners, I believe that notice was in fact legally sufficient. The district is required to provide notice of the proposed rates. It can certainly provide additional information. Some additional information was in fact provided. We are not required by law to provide all sorts of different information, a comparison of rates year over year, or how much rates would be increased for each particular class of customer, et cetera. So the notice that the district sent out was and is legally sufficient And in my opinion, that is not grounds to have the district restart this process all over again. We can move forward tonight if that's the board's pleasure. With respect to the assertions that the project is, the process is insufficient and we should start over again because of the technical difficulties that the public is faced with respect to seeing and hearing public comments. First of all, I believe that our process, the process tonight, despite some technical issues, is legally sufficient and complies with the governor's executive order that applies to the conduct of public meetings under the Brown Act. We certainly want to avoid and minimize any technical difficulties and provide the public the greatest possible access. President Bender did in fact go back and read the public comments that were submitted tonight. Even though I don't think that is legally required, I think it was for this matter was good practice. But I do not think that the technical issues that were identified by the public and brought to our attention are sufficient grounds to make us start the process over again. Again, I believe the board can continue with the process tonight if it chooses to do so. And I'll let Brian address issues with respect to Donner Lake and Glenshire, but I also have some knowledge and history on that, and so I'm certainly available to buttress whatever information Brian would provide.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, and I see kind of a little bit of a correlation between, or similarity in a couple of the questions with respect to development, Donner Lake, and the Glenshire system acquisitions. And what we're discussing this evening and what this public hearing is regarding and what the board's considering is a rate, water rates. Water rates are one component of funding our operations, maintenance, and capital improvements. Another component of this is fees, and fees such as facility fees are designed or intended to fund, for lack of a better term, initial buy-in and investment into the source and storage of our water and our distribution of our water utility system. So every property or parcel, when they sign up for service or construct, they have a facility fee associated with essentially investment and buying into the system. Rates pay for repair, replacement, and capital improvements of existing facilities in the system. In the case of the development here in town, all of those developers, as they submit construction permits and build these facilities, they pay a facility fee that's separate from the rate we're discussing this evening. And so that facility fee accounts for their supply, storage, and distribution to their parcel. In the case of Donner Lake, and if we get into the detailed legalese, absolutely, district council would be much more expert on that component. But in just kind of broad sweeping generalization of both those acquisitions, in the case of Donner Lake, you had a system owned and operated by a different entity that was in notice of violation, actually several notices of violations, and the district acquired that system through condemnation at the request of the property owners or parcel owners there, the community. And part of that acquisition, contingent, one of the contingencies was to fund the replacement of extremely dilapidated and failing system. It was not compliant with any of the state California Department of Public Health requirements and provisions. And so we knew it was going to require heavy investment. So part of that, acquisition, for lack of a better term, was that assessment, including the payment of the state revolving fund that was set up for some of the improvements there. In terms of Glenshire, it was similar. However, Glenshire had some real properties that could be sold as part of that acquisition to pay off some of the investment that the district had to do to make those connections. None of that was associated with fees that we're discussing this evening. Those were, for lack of a better term, the buy-in to the facility fees from both of those systems to become one with the district system and provide any improvements that were necessary to make them compliant. The district, in the best benefit of the community and the existing customers, didn't want to take on a system that required exhaustive repairs and improvements. So they're apples and oranges here, but it's a great question. And clearly there's a distinction between fees, which we're not discussing this evening, and rates, which is this, before the board this evening for approval.
And if I may, President Bender, I can provide a little more detail with respect to the acquisitions of the Donner Lake and Glenshire systems. As Brian pointed out, both of those systems were owned and operated by private water companies, different private water companies. They were not publicly owned. Those systems were regulated by the California Public Utilities Commission, and they were both experiencing different states of disrepair at the time that the district acquired them. As Brian indicated, the Donner Lake system had suffered from many leaks and boil water orders issued by the state, and the customers served by that water system petitioned the district to take over the water system, to acquire it and take it over, which the district did through condemnation. But part of the requirement that the district imposed upon those customers was to say, in order for the district to acquire and then maintain and operate your system, it has to be brought up to the current district's standards. And the system was not meeting the current district standards. For example, 2-inch water mains, 2-inch water lines were typical throughout the Donner Lake system because of the time and history when that system was built. That was more of the standard, but it was not the standard when the district acquired it. So there was significant capital upgrades and improvements that were required to bring that system up to the current district standards that would be a maintainable standard. Similarly, out in Glenshire, the Glenshire Mutual Water Company had experienced high levels of arsenic in several of its wells and was facing very significant costs to address that arsenic problem. And the company requested the district to acquire the system. The district did, and it set the same standards, if you will, that in order to acquire the system would have to be brought up to the district standards. However, because of the age of the system, it was far newer than the Donner Lake system. Far less capital improvements were necessary to bring it up to the standard. And as Brian mentioned, the Donner Lake Water Company had substantial assets, including several properties that were able to be sold. And those assets were used to defer the costs that the customers in the Glenshire area would have had to bear. And therefore, the cost to the Glenshire area customers to become part of the district was far less than that of Donner Lake, but both systems were subjected to the same standards. And that's a little bit more of the history.
Thank you both. I think that was it was certainly helpful for me. It's all I've heard it before, but the refreshers are very welcome. And it's also a bit of a cautionary tale. If we don't maintain our systems, there's kind of nobody left to take us over. So, it's just, yeah, we have to maintain and improve our system.
Trying to unmute. Now I'm finally unmuted. Okay. Public hearing, check. Director comments and questions and clarifications from Brian and Steve and Tony and Bob and Joe and Krista. Good. So I just want to reiterate, the system is not dilapidated here, the Truckee Donner PUD. Our system is up to district standards. Our system is meeting the state requirements. There are now additional requirements for redundancy from the state. There are additional requirements for emergency water for fire flow. Some of the, you can't just, those water lines in the 60s and 70s that were buried with rocks, they have a useful life, and those water lines get old and they do need to be replaced. We've looked at this before. Over the last 12 years of being on the board, we've been doing just enough, and we're always a little behind on the water district, and with these additional requirements and really trying to handle the water flow for emergencies, we need to do this. And we need to do this for our ratepayers, even though it's painful. We're all ratepayers here. So we're all going to feel it at different levels. And I am in support of this. There were some ideas from public comment regarding breaking up the water rates again. We've looked into this a lot, like significant charges regarding consumption to prioritize or incentivize those for that. Well, unfortunately, half of our community doesn't live here. So now all of a sudden, we're going to have enormous use charges. And then our locals get penalized severely, and those low-income folks now are truly drawn out of this district, and we can't do that. So we've looked at this a lot. We've looked at our debt ratios, and moving ahead, we want to be in the position to borrow if we need to borrow more money and do that for these systems. So I'm in full support of this, even though we're going to get hit hard from it. And Tony, I do agree. I did write that down. These are the maximum amounts. And I just want to clarify with Steve that, again, in this, let me just click on, in the ordinance we're adopting, we're allowed to say 1 year is a maximum per this ordinance of 8%, that the district could decide to go with 5%, 6%, or anything underneath the maximum rate that we would be approving tonight.
That's correct. So under this process, the board, if you adopted this ordinance and these rates, these would be the maximum rates that you would be authorized to set for each of the fiscal years. You're not required to set rates at the maximum amount. And you could, in fact, in any given year, adjust rates to less than the maximum amount. And then in following years, you could adjust rates up to the maximum amount. Now, Director Laliotis had asked that perhaps I consider some language for the ordinance that might address these 2 points, that these are maximum rates and that the board would look at and consider those rates. I have prepared some sample or some draft language. If you'd like me to read that to you, I can do that now. Okay, so, and I'd be happy to read it a couple times. I appreciate that there's not a document in front of you or in front of the public. So what I'm suggesting is that we have an addition to the ordinance that would be a new section 2. A new section 2 that would state the rates set forth in section 1 above for fiscal years 2022, 2023, 2024, and 2025 are the maximum authorized rates, and the board shall annually review the need to adjust the rates to the maximum authorized rates or to some lesser rates. Would you like me to read that again?
Yeah.
Unless there's any comments from
fellow board members, that was pretty good on the fly, Steve Gross. So,
One.
all right, I think with that, we are at the point, is there a motion to accept and direct staff to file the Truckee Donner Public Utility District 2020 water rate study and to adopt ordinance 2020-02, setting water rates for fiscal year 21 through 25, and as amended by Steve Gross regarding adding section 2.
Was that a motion, Jeff?
I was asking for a motion.
Yes.
So all you need to do is be so moved per President Bender.
So moved, President Bender, Joe Aguirre.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
I will second that motion. I couldn't get to my.
I think that was pretty clear.
I like that part that you injected about we can go up or we can come down.
Oh, we can't go up, Joe.
No,
to
the maximum, he said.
Right, to the maximum as set forth in tonight's ordinance.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Could we have roll call, please? Shauna?
Thank you. Director Laliotis,
Yes.
Director Aguirre,
Yes.
Director Ellis,
Yes.
Vice President Finn,
Yes.
President Bender.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wow, technical difficulties working through it. So I just appreciate everyone's effort here tonight on the public hearing. I myself need a short break.
Yeah. One thing, this is Joe. Could the technical difficulties be at the other end also? I mean, it didn't have to be at our end.
Tony, you're muted.
Pardon?
Tony was muted. He said something.
Oh, okay.
There's a myriad of possibilities as to why there were technical difficulties, but I think we mitigated all of those by the actions that Jeff took and concurrence by district council. So
I think so too, but could there be difficulties from the other end too? Their computers at the other end. There could have been too.
Potentially, but I feel we did our best to mitigate.
Yes, we did. I think we did too. Thank you, Jeff.
All right. Thank you, everyone. So it is I'm in favor of a break.
I
Okay.
second the motion.
Okay. All right. Let's, what do you want? 5 minutes or 10? Okay.
We're going to go on to the next of the.
No. We're going to take a 5-minute break and come back at approximately 7:53 p.m. A little short, but okay. We've got 4. Joe, are you back? Hey, Joe, there you are. Are you here?
He's on his way.
Okay, thank you.
still over here. She didn't spell it. Okay.
Might have dropped.
There you go. You're on.
Didn't spill.
Okay, we've got 5. So, all right, we're back. We're back and we're now on the consent calendar. There are 3 items, item number 9, 10, and 11. Some insurance renewals, annual procurement with Thatcher Company, and contract approval for Wild and Financial Services. Is there any public comment on the consent calendar tonight?
No, Mr. President, I'm not seeing any.
Okay. And no additional Q&A. So we'll close public comment on the consent. Are there any board members with questions, comments, want to pull an item, see a presentation?
Jeff, I just want to make a comment on our insurance renewals. Fact that our premiums are going up about 1% in this current insurance climate is just as great for, obviously for our costs and improving the value of joining Aqua JPIA and the insurance pool. It has insulated us from a lot of the other issues going on within the insurance industry based on the catastrophic wildfires. So we're already seeing the dividends and the payback of moving into this insurance pool. So I just want to recognize that and thank staff's hard work on workers' comp, keeping our XMOD factor low. So just want to shout out to everyone involved in continuing our relationship with Aqua JPIA.
Thanks, Tony. All right, is there a motion?
I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Shauna, do we have roll call, please?
Thank you, Director Aguirre,
Yes.
Director Ellis,
Yes.
Director Laliotis,
Yes.
Vice President Finn,
Yes.
President Bender.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, consent calendar done. Okay, action item number 12, continue the approval for the emergency procurement of transformer bushings for the Martis Valley substation. Hey, there's Joe.
Good evening, President Bender and members of the board. This is action item number 12, the consideration to continue the emergency procurement. And this is a fairly short presentation. Feel free to interrupt me or stop me and ask any questions during the presentation. And I'll share my screen to get this going.
I have a question already, Joe.
Sure.
Are the bushings in, the first week of December, will they be in then?
The bushings have shipped this past Monday, and they should arrive in Truckee on December 7th. So a few days.
Better yet. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All right, go ahead.
All right. So by way of background, the board approved a contract for substation testing services at the October 7th meeting. The contract is with NorCal Power Services, or NCPS, to perform testing under a support services agreement we have in place with NCPA, Northern California Power Agency. That support service agreement was signed back in the year 2016. Testing services include in-depth inspection and testing of the major substation equipment. So 7 of the 8 high-side transformer bushings failed testing, and the vendor, NCPS, recommended the immediate replacement of those bushings as they can fail catastrophically. The general manager declared an emergency situation on November 11th to expedite the replacement of those bushings and to get the Martis substation back online before peak loads occur in the December timeframe. And this is permitted by District Code Section 3.08 100.2. The board ratified this action at our last meeting on November 18th. So the replacement bushings were ordered on November 16th. The bushings have shipped and they are expected to arrive on Monday, December 7th. Unfortunately, Amazon Prime service wasn't available, so we had to settle for 7-day service, but they are on their way. Installation will require 2 to 3 days of good weather, and which we expect for the week of December 7th, next week. And we expect the substation to be back online no later than the 15th. So this emergency action must be reviewed by the board at regularly scheduled meetings. And this is to determine the need to continue the action. And this is per District Code Section 3.08 100.4. And finally, staff anticipates bringing an action item to the board for their consideration at the first regularly scheduled meeting in January to close out this emergency action, also per district code. And so this is a summary of the timeline as previously discussed. Again, we anticipate the bushings to be delivered by Monday, December 7th, and the replacement work to proceed and be complete early next week. So the transformer bushing replacement was not a budgeted repair expense, but we have the electric department does have a positive financial forecast for operating budget, and sufficient funds exist within our board approved budget for this work. Therefore, it is staff's recommendation to the board that we continue the emergency procurement action for the replacement of 8 120 kV bushings for the power transformers at Martis Valley Substation. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Joe. I'd like to open action item number 12 tonight regarding the Martis Valley Substation transformer bushings up to public comment.
Seeing none, President Bender.
Oh, say again? I talked over you.
Oh, I'm not seeing any, President Bender.
Got it. Neither am I. Okay, so we'll close public comment. Krista, do you have any thoughts on emergency substation transformer bushing purchases?
No, thank you. It was a pleasure to see you, Joe. Thank you for keeping us updated. I'm glad it's proceeding apace. Obviously, no one likes the thought of catastrophic failure over Christmas.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Krista. Joe, any thoughts?
Well, I already jumped in prematurely there for a minute and I got my question answered, which was good. Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.
Good job on that.
Got it. Bob. You're muted, Bob. There we are.
Now I can talk.
Yes.
Hey, Joe, those are bushings, not bushy squirrels, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah, right.
Just checking on that. Okay. No, I don't have any questions. Great job, and hopefully they come in with no issues, and you guys can get them installed.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Tony.
Yeah, no, thanks for the update, Joe, and I'll move staff's recommendation.
Great. Thank you, Tony. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I'm in full agreement. So let's, Shauna, roll call, please.
Thank you, Director Ellis,
Yes.
Director Laliotis,
Yes.
Director Aguirre,
Yes.
Vice President Finn,
Yes.
President Bender.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. We're on to number 13, consideration to award a contract to design the Martis Woods Hydro Pneumatic Pump Station. I see Neil Kaufman somewhere floating around. There you are.
Yes, sir. Good evening, President Bender and other members of the board. If you'll give me a moment here. Again, good evening. The item before you is consideration of a contract to design the Martis Woods hydropneumatic pump station. Our Martis Woods tank site is located on Rocky Ridge Court in the backside of Martis Woods. At this location, we have a ground level storage tank, an elevated storage tank, a pump station that takes water from the ground level tank and pumps it to the elevated tank based on the water level in the elevated tank. And these facilities were built in 1982. And the elevated tank serves our Martis Woods pressure zone, which currently has 45 single-family homes. And we're expecting an additional 3 homes at build-out. And so you can see here the location of the site. It's kind of in the back end of the Martis Woods subdivision, on the southern end of our service territory. We completed a structural evaluation of the elevated tank, and this determined that we had some significant repairs and upgrades that were needed to comply with current codes. We then looked at the cost of this work. We had an economic evaluation performed, and it was determined that replacement of the elevated tank with a hydropneumatic pump station would be more cost effective than going ahead and repairing the existing tank. And our plan is that the existing elevated tank and pump station would be demolished after the new hydropneumatic pump station is completed and operational. So outlined here, we have kind of a conceptual site plan. You can see we have the ground level tank here kind of in the northeast portion of the property. We've got the elevated tank in the southwest portion. The existing pump station is a little to the south of the existing ground level tank. And the new pump station would be located pretty much in the only open space available, which is to the northwest of the existing ground level tank.
Say, Neil?
Yes, sir.
This is Joe. What road do you take to get up to that tank? I'm in.
So you would kind of get onto Thalen Drive, if you know where that is. And then Rocky Ridge Court is a small cul-de-sac off of Thalen.
Oh, Phelan. Yeah. Okay. Now I know. I was up to that tank one time, I think.
Perhaps, if you perhaps remember where our former general manager, Mr. Holtzmeister.
Yes.
I don't know if you ever.
Yes.
It's not far from his residence.
Right, and it's kind of an isolated tank. I thought there was no houses around it. Seemed like, and it seemed to me like it's up on a little hill.
Yeah, it's on a little rise. You can see here from the aerial photograph, we do have a couple of existing homes that are in close proximity.
Yeah, there I see them. Okay, now I'm with it.
Okay. So in recent history, the district has utilized a combination of in-house staff and contractors to design and construct our water facilities such as pump stations and well structures. Going forward, we've determined that we have a need to update our facility construction standards with higher efficiency pump and motor control assemblies and updating the facility designs. And we do need a more thorough set of bid documents to accommodate the public bidding process. And we believe that we need an outside consultant for this design work. We issued a request for proposals in October of this year. We received 4 proposals. The firms are outlined here: Doma Kelly and Associates, Far West Engineering, Loomis and Associates, and Sowers Engineering. We had a staff committee to evaluate the proposals based on the criteria listed here: proposed scope of work and methodology, experience of the firm with similar projects, experience of the project team with similar projects, the firm's QA, QC control procedures, references, and cost. Per our normal process, we received both a technical proposal and a cost proposal. Upon review of the technical proposals, we had determined that Far West Engineering had the most favorable proposal. And then we reviewed the cost proposals. And again, Far West Engineering was the most favorable proposal from a cost standpoint. So our overall aggregate ranking is summarized here in this table. Far West Engineering first, Domenicali second, Loomis and Associates third, with Sowers Engineering fourth. So it is the recommendation that this design work be awarded to Far West Engineering. Outlined here is the planned project timeline. Again, the recommendation to award the design contract this evening. We're looking at the 60% design in January, the 95% design in February, looking to begin advertising for bids in the middle of March, with award of the contract at the Board of Directors meeting on April 21st of 2021. We would then begin construction in May, and we're targeting the late fall for having the new facility operational. And we're currently anticipating demolition of the existing pump station and elevated tank in the following summer. If we get lucky and we have a good schedule and a good contractor, and if some of the equipment procurements happen a little quicker, we might get it done in 2021, but we think that's a little overly optimistic. So the scope of work described in the RFP did not include daily on-site construction inspection. We're anticipating that work will be performed under a separate contract by a third-party inspector. There would be some periodic site visits from the design consultant, but they would not have an on-site daily presence. We currently anticipate that the project would be categorically exempt under CEQA. And we have been in contact with the adjoining homeowners and with Placer County regarding this upcoming project. In terms of fiscal impact, the cost proposal from Far West Engineering was a little over $123,000. We are recommending that a 10% change order allowance be established for a total authorization of $135,700. And this project, the Martis Woods Pump Station Replacement Project, was included in the board-approved water capital budget for fiscal year 21. So the recommendation before you is to award a contract to Far West Engineering to perform this design of the Martis Woods Hydropneumatic Pump Station Project in an amount not to exceed $135,700. And I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Neil. I'm going to now open it up for public comment regarding Q&A or emails. Shauna, I'm not seeing any. Would you concur?
I concur, Mr. President, and none in my email.
Got it. All right, thank you. So we'll close public comment and Bob, do you have any thoughts on action item number 13?
No, I did notice it wasn't in Tahoe Donner though. So I think the rest of the district's getting a little support there. But no, it's a very, very good report. And thanks, Neil, for doing a great job on that. And it's a lot less expensive than I thought it would be to replace that facility.
Well, that's just to design it. Keep in mind.
The engineering.
Yeah, this is just
Okay.
to create paper.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Joe, what do you got?
What do I have? Does Neil, does he have some kind of a ballpark figure on the whole project?
I'm sorry, on the construction cost?
Yes, just a ballpark.
Yeah, Brian, I think you had indicated what we have in the budget for next year.
Yeah, well, the CIP plan has that in the kind of the high 400,000 to maybe $500,000 range. You know, it depends on what comes out of the design recommendations and some of the unknowns in terms of earthwork at the facility. There is some rock croppings there that are of concern, and you know, kind of the unknown in the demolition cost of the elevated tank.
Oh, yeah, understood. Understood,
So it's not just construction. There's also a lot of demo work here.
yeah.
Got it. Thank you. Krista, any thoughts?
No thoughts. I've had my fair share of thoughts today. Thank you, Neil, for the presentation. It was clear, it was concise, and I answered all my questions that I might have. Thank you.
Got it. Tony?
Just one comment. While I'm generally not in favor of eliminating gravity storage, I understand the process and the value of getting away from the elevated tank and the associated long-term maintenance and risks associated with elevated tanks like that. So I think it is the right call to move to a hydro station, and I assume we will be including sufficient fire pumps for that pressure zone as part of the project.
Yeah, I would expect actually that ideally we'll have a little bit improved fire flow out there. That facility was designed around a 750 gallon a minute fire flow demand. We're going to be targeting at least 1,000 gallons a minute and higher. You know, with the pumps, we'll have a lot more flexibility in order to increase flows.
Right. No, you're not restricted by the tank elevation and generating pressure. So I agree. So yeah, no, it's, you know, just another added benefit of investment in the capital infrastructure is improved fire flows for that area, those 45 homes, as well as anyone else potentially surrounding those neighborhoods should a fire break out in that specific area. So great project, great process, and move forward.
All right, thank you. I share the same thoughts. So thank you, Neil. Thank you, Brian. Really good work. And is there a motion?
I'll move approval. I'll move staff's recommendation.
I'll second.
Okay, Shauna, roll call, please.
Thank you, Director Aguero,
Yes,
Director Laliotis,
Yes.
Director Ellis,
Yes.
Vice President Ben,
Yes,
President Bender.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, number 14, consideration of fiscal year 21 annual contract and procurements. Who's doing that one?
When we have Mr. Salmon joining us.
Got it.
Hello.
Hello.
Good evening, President Bender and members of the board. This is action item 14 in your packets. There is no PowerPoint presentation for relatively a lot of numbers page. If we do want to bring up the board packet information, Shauna, can we present that if we need to? The board would like.
Absolutely.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Is there any public comment on item number 14 regarding annual contract and procurements?
Seeing none, Mr. President.
Okay, we will close public comment. All right, any questions from the directors, comments? Want to see the data again, etc.?
No comments. I'll move staff's recommendation.
I'll second it.
Shauna, roll call, please.
Thank you, Director Ellis,
Yes.
Director Laliotis,
Yes.
Director Aguirre,
Yes.
Vice President Finn,
Yes.
President Bender.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Short and sweet. Okay, that takes us to routine business. We have some minutes from the special meeting, September 16th, regular meeting, October 7th, and the special meeting, October 21st. Any public comment on the minutes? Nope. No public comment. So is there a motion or any questions from the directors?
I'll move to approve the aforementioned minutes.
Second.
On a roll call, please.
Director Aguirre,
Yes.
Director Ellis,
Yes.
Director Laliotis,
Yes.
Vice President Finn,
Yes.
President Bender.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item number 16, approval of the treasurer's report, December 2020. We have item 16A, approval of the treasurer's report of fund balances for the month ended October 2020. Any public comment on that? I'm not seeing any, so no public comment. Is there a motion?
Move to approve the treasurer's report.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay, motion and a second. Shauna, roll call, please.
Director Laliotis,
Yes.
Director Ellis,
Yes.
Director Aguirre,
Yes.
Vice President Finn,
Yes.
President Bender.
Yes. All right, thank you. So we've got some bills to pay, disbursements for November 2020.
I move we pay the bills.
I'll second that.
Shauna, roll call, please.
Yeah.
Director Ellis,
Yes.
Director Aguirre,
Yes.
Director Laliotis,
Yes.
Vice President Finn,
Yes.
President Bender.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Those are all approved. So we have some special business tonight. We have a board meeting scheduled for 2021. There we are. So we're gonna add some meetings to accommodate the strategic planning.
Strategic planning and the upcoming budget next year.
That's right. I knew it was budget, but I wanted to read that again. So thank you, Shauna. Budget.
I did not provide a presentation for this item, but would be happy to go over it if anybody would like.
Got it. Is there any request from any of the directors to see that presentation?
Well, we don't do.
Okay.
Is there any public comment on our proposed meeting schedule for 2021?
No, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. So is there a motion?
I'll move staff's recommendation.
I'll second. No, sorry.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Whoever you wrote down, Shauna, roll call, please.
Thank you. Director Loliotis,
Yes.
Director Ellis,
Yes.
Director Aguirre,
Yes.
Vice President Finn,
Yes.
President Bender.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay. Special business number 18, results for the November 3rd election. They're finally in. We have certified results of Kim, Joe, and Bob, and Bob is falling off, unfortunately. Sorry, Bob, last meeting, buddy. As I mentioned before, and all as board members, it was a pleasure.
Sorry, Bob.
So we have to accept these results. Is there a motion for that?
I'll move that we accept the November 3rd, 2020 election results.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Shauna, roll call, please.
Thank you. Director Ellis,
Yes.
Director Loliotis,
Yes.
Director Aguirre,
Yes.
Vice President Finn,
Yes.
President Bender.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, that concludes all the open session items. We have one closed session tonight. Number 19, pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, Public Employee Performance Evaluation, Interim General Manager's Performance Review. Shauna emailed out a link to that, and I believe it was on Monday.
Yes, sir. I can send it at any point if anybody needs an update.
Got it. Went out on Monday at 9:37 a.m. just to clarify if you can't find it. So we will be leaving this meeting and going into closed session. So
Elvis has left the building.
thank you.
That was his last word.
We're open. We're open.
You tell them,
We're open.
do they know?
Okay, Joe's on, Krista's on, Tony's on. I'm not seeing Bob. I hung up on, well, should we just, we have a quorum.
We have a quorum.
We're out of closed session. There is no reportable action. Pausing, see if Bob's joining. So let's adjourn. Is everyone good with that?
Move to adjourn.
Okay. So moved, meeting adjourned. Thank
Right.
you everyone very much.
Good night.
All right.